Am I the a-hole for leaving my husband after he refused to support me during labor? This happened 2 months ago, but the tension it's caused is still very much alive. I, 29F, and my husband, Mark, 32M, have been together for 6 years and married for 3. We were thrilled when we found out we were going to have our first child. The pregnancy was rough on me, though. Severe nausea, gestational diabetes, and I felt awful most of the time. But Mark was attentive, helping me through the tough days. As my due date approached, we talked about the birth plan, and I was clear that I wanted him by my side in the delivery room. He assured me he'd be there for me. But as the day got closer, I noticed a shift in his behavior. He became distant, seemed preoccupied, and avoided conversations about the baby. I figured he was just feeling anxious, so I didn't push him too much. The day I went into labor, Mark drove me to the hospital, but his mood was off. He barely spoke, kept looking at his phone, and seemed distracted. Once we got there, he had a private conversation with one of the nurses. She came back and told me Mark wasn't going to be in the delivery room because he didn't feel comfortable with the idea of being around the medical procedures. This came as a complete shock. He had never once mentioned this to me before. I was devastated and begged him to stay. I needed his support, but he just kept saying, "I can't handle it." He kissed my forehead, said he'd wait in the lobby, and left. I felt so abandoned. The labor was long and painful, and I had to go through it completely alone, except for the medical staff. When our son was finally born, I was emotionally and physically drained. As I held him, I couldn't shake the sadness that Mark wasn't there to share the moment with me. Later, when I was moved to the recovery room, I asked the nurse to bring Mark in. That's when I found out he had left the hospital hours ago. I tried calling him several times, but he didn't answer. Eventually, I sent him a message saying he could find his own way home because I was done. I didn't see him again until the next day, when he showed up with flowers and an apology. He said he'd panicked, went home to shower, and accidentally fell asleep. I didn't believe him. I was furious and told him he had abandoned me at the worst possible time. He apologized repeatedly, saying he knew he messed up and would do whatever it took to make things right. I told him I needed space, and he reluctantly left. The rest of my hospital stay was just me and the baby, and I couldn't stop replaying everything that had happened in my mind. Since then, Mark has been trying hard to make up for what he did. He's been taking parenting classes, going to therapy, and making an effort to be more present. But I'm still struggling with what happened. He left me alone at one of the most vulnerable moments of my life, and every time I look at him, I'm reminded of that feeling. It's hard to shake the sense of betrayal. My family is divided. Some say I'm being too harsh, that he made a mistake, and is genuinely sorry. Others think what he did is unforgivable, and that I should leave him because I'll never fully trust him again. I'm torn. I still love him, and I know he loves me and our child, but I can't help but wonder if I'll ever be able to move past this. ITA for leaving him at the hospital and considering leaving him for good?